Okay, this is just a super quick tutorial on Photoshop texturing workflow and the best way I found to do it. So I have this mesh, it's a chair, and it's broken up into all the individual pieces and it's neatly named and everything has the history deleted and the center pivots are enabled for everything, so it's all nice and clean. And currently I'm working in a whip file, and so if you want to get this into a stage where it can be textured by someone, then you have to put it into a published file to avoid my references breaking. So I'm just going to select my object and go Mesh Combine, and then it'll put it into a poly surface. So I'm going to delete the history on that one and then rename it Geo Chair A01, and then I'm going to center the pivot on that one as well, and I'm going to move it to the center of the scene so that it's in a relatively simple place, and then obviously you'd have to freeze transformations on that after you've moved it. So now this is completely ready to be exported and then referenced in, and one way you can check that is just go into the hypershade, and you should have no extra materials, nothing in here, no extra shading groups that you don't need. Those are the 4 cameras are the default ones, so they'll be fine. But as long as it's all empty, then that's good. One way you can get Maya to clean things up, it's a little unpredictable, but if you've got everything set up properly, then it'll do it correctly. You just want to go File, Optimize Scene Size, and then it will warn you that it's not undoable, so be careful. And then press OK, and it will essentially delete anything that isn't currently being used. So it'll make it nice and clean. And then delete the history again just to be safe. And then I'm going to save it as Chair A Published. Place the file, and it'll save. And now that's ready to be UV exported. So I'm now working in Chair A Published, so I saved over it. And you want to go select the mesh and then go Edit UVs, UV Texture Editor. And then you can see here are the UVs all nicely laid out. And we're going to be rendering in smooth mode, so it's best to export the UV tile in whatever mode you want to render in. So that would be obviously hard edges, and then that's smooth. So you go polygons, UV snapshot, and then you choose a place to save it. Let's put it in there. I'm going to call it Chair A Out UV. 1048 is fine. PNG, uncheck anti-alias lines so you get the harsh edges, and then obviously 0101 if you're using just one tile, which for this we are, because obviously the UV coordinates are U1 and then V1, so that's just one tile. And then press OK. A file exists, so I'm going to overwrite it, and then I'm just going to jump over into Photoshop and I'm going to open that file, and then this is all ready to be textured. One thing I'm going to do, well, one thing I like to do is rename this top layer to Guides, and then lock it so that you won't ever paint on it. I'm just going to make a layer beneath that, call it background, and fill it in black. Now here you can see we've got our UV tile exported straight out of Maya, and so let's just do a quick test. Make a new layer, and then we'll paint in red. We'll just put down some very faint colour just so we can test it, and then we'll put some green on certain parts. Okay, and then what you do when you save out is you make sure everything's organised into folders. So if this is going to be the diffuse, then I'm going to put that layer in there, call that diffuse, and then obviously you would have different folders for the diffuse and the specular, and that means you can keep everything in one Photoshop file and keep it neat. And then when you export it, you would turn off the guides and then go File, Save As, and depending on what format you're using, I usually use a JPEG or a TIFF. I'm going to do this in JPEG. You then name the file respectively, so Chair A Diff, diffuse, and then obviously highest quality, press OK, and then it'll save out. And then if you go into Maya and you assign a new material just to test it, it's always good to have the materials applied in Maya so you can go back and check things and make sure everything's working. Go into File, and then we'll find the texture that we just made somewhere. There it is. And now you can see it's applied and the textures are stuck on various places. And if you unsmooth it, the textures will usually stay pretty much intact. but it's always better to texture with a smooth UV tile if that's what you're planning on doing. So yeah, that's a very basic Maya to Photoshop texturing workflow. Thanks for watching.